director said only when he tells you to go.
All right. When you point. Good evening and welcome to Law Talk, the show that brings the events of the day, the Constitution, and the law to you. Tonight, we've got three exciting subjects, and myself, James Barrett, and Mark Malachowski are going to cover these for you. So, Mark, what are we starting with?
Well, we're going to start with the Durham report, which is kind of interesting because we did a show on this about 7 years ago about the Russian Trump collusion. And then number two, we're going to go to Lake versus Maricopa County.
You're talking about Kari Lake,
That's about an
the
election.
woman that ran for governor.
Yeah, and it's election
Fraud, maybe.
Election fraud. I don't know if we're allowed to say that anymore. And then number three, Aretha Franklin's will. Now, we talked about that 5 years ago, and we said, you know, this would probably come up again, and it did. So that's our three. We've got the Durham report, number one, Lake versus Maricopa County about the voting and the election, one thing or another, and Aretha Franklin's will.
Okay, well, why don't we start with the Durham report? We know that we waited for many years to hear the results of this report, and we do know that under President Trump, that Attorney General Barr assigned Durham as an independent counsel to do an investigation regarding what was interesting, I think, a changing group of subjects. Mark, so what did Mr. Durham focus on?
Well, like I said, years ago, we did a show, and we actually had Trump on, and we had President Trump on, and we had Colin from Vladimir Putin.
Vladimir Putin.
And I
show.
think our show was a little more comprehensive than the Durham report was. The Durham report is kind of interesting. 2019, Durham was supposed to look at Crossfire Hurricane. Crossfire Hurricane was basically saying that Trump had a Russian prostitute who urinated on a bed in his hotel room, and since that's the case, Putin could blackmail Trump, so Trump was a Russian spy.
Okay, so wait a minute, let me get this right.
So
that is a pretty exciting beginning to an event.
Well,
but this event went on for years.
Well, it went on, it's still going on.
It's still going on.
It hasn't stopped. And so
Wasn't the president impeached twice over this?
yeah, it was impeached twice. But it turns out, after looking at the Durham report, from what little it said, it's really long, 150 pages, but it's probably, you know, a beat cop could have written it up in 20 minutes or something. But, you know, it has a lot of fluff in it. But basically, it's encapsulating, it says, turns out the only folks that were involved in the Trump-Russian collusion was everybody but Trump and Russia. So, you know, and so Durham says our report notes are sobering. Well, it's sobering because it's 150 pages, and he could have done it in like a half a page.
Yeah, well, you know why, Mark? Remember when we first talked about this? It was really obvious to anyone that paid attention that this was done during an election, started during an election by the opposing party. And it was Hillary and her gang at
Fusion GPS,
yes, Fusion
the Steel
GPS,
report, James
Comey, the law firm.
Comey was involved.
James Comey.
Comey's been working with the Clintons since Arkansas.
Oh yes,
Arkansas and the
Mena, Arkansas, and the airplanes flying in with the drugs. I mean, this is how long this gang's been together.
And so they've been working together for decades, right? And the other guy, the Mueller, he's been working with the Clintons for decades.
Well, Mueller's been in the middle of it for a long time.
Decades.
And amazing enough, you know, he said, what's the dossier at the end of his investigation?
Well, the dossier,
I never read the dossier.
The dossier was a Steele report, and it was based on some volunteer for Trump sitting in a bar in Australia, and then
over a glass of
wine,
alcohol.
And they made that, and so once you have a FISA warrant
Wait a
on
minute,
him, which
FISA,
is a top secret.
Okay,
It's
let's talk about what a FISA
no,
is.
let's talk about what's that Animal House? It's like double secret probation. Okay, FISA warrant is like a double secret probation. It's like you don't know what you did, nobody knows what it is, and after they use it, they don't have to explain how they got it.
Hang on. Let's talk about what a FISA is. FISA is a effective warrant that needs to be presented before a secret judge, and that secret judge actually has to have credible evidence presented by the FBI presenters and signed off by 2 senior members at the FBI. Well, it just so happens that James Comey is signing the FISA. The FISA was based on the dossier, the Steele dossier, which was created but after this group of people were paid over $1 million to create a report, and it was the FBI that knew that the Clinton campaign paid for it, and then he signed a FISA warrant. But what's the funniest part? They used information that they had leaked through Yahoo and a couple of other outlets.
Well, it was Struck and his girlfriend.
That's right.
Yeah,
they
kind of made this whole thing up.
And they leaked it
well,
first.
Hang
on. They leaked it first to media.
Yeah.
Then James Comey used the media printing it, saying it's legitimate. And so it was actually a big circle of an enterprise to trap the president and hold back all the things he was trying to do for his whole presidency.
Basically was a logical fallacy. And
so what else? Who else was involved
James
in
Comey and Celio signed the petition, and the person who generally does the administration of that, who checks it, makes sure it's all good, he refused to sign it. I think he resigned. And then they put somebody new in there who I won't mention, who's the wife of the
FBI.
No, her husband is the person who checks it up on the Supreme Court to a Supreme Court member who won't be mentioned.
Right.
So basically, there was both sides, the FBI and the Supreme Court, had a married couple who were vetting each other.
Right.
And so the guy who usually would vet stuff from the FBI, he said, I'm not touching it.
He said, I'm not going near this.
He's not going to touch this.
And by the way, funny enough, the FISA warrants are it's foreign surveillance warrants.
Yeah, it's espionage.
And so we're not even talking about foreign surveillance. We're talking about events that happened in America, and the only foreign part was somebody was in a bar in Australia having some cold ones, and he said one sentence, and they immediately used that as the whole basis for the Steele dossier.
Well, the thing is, you got to understand, if you have a warrant on one person, anyone they've called in their whole life, you get a warrant on them, and then anyone they called, you get a warrant on that. So
but you know, the FISA is not supposed to be.
That's like the 6 levels of.
But FISA is not supposed. This is the part that people are forgetting why FISA was initiated.
It's espionage.
It's foreign espionage, not what goes on in America. So FISA to be used in this circumstance from the very beginning was a complete fraud on the people and the citizens of America. And unfortunately, we had 4 years of a nightmare, and it's still pretending.
No, it still goes on.
It still pretends that Hillary Clinton had nothing to do with it, even though all her money paid for it.
Anyway, Durham notes the FBI was not able to corroborate. I hope I said that right. A single substantive allegation contained in the Steele report, and that was the basis of the FISA warrant. And not only that, the CIA told the president, who was Obama at that time, Vice President, who was Biden. And
by accident.
And then Comey and the Attorney General of the Clinton campaign plan to create a Trump-Russia scandal. So Brennan, to get out of hot water, he ratted out everybody. He said, I told him this was all nonsense.
I told him it was fake.
And so that's how it all worked out.
But you know what's interesting? Hang on.
The CIA,
Facebook, Google, Twitter, all the gang said that, none of this is true. Hillary had nothing to do with it.
No, but the point is, the CIA would be the guy in charge of espionage.
Yeah, it was CIA, NSA, all the gang.
Those guys said, this is not a real deal. but that wasn't put in the warrant.
And
And
by the way,
the warrant application didn't say, "Oh, by the way, the head of the CIA said
Say
this
it's
is
bunk."
This is nonsense." They forgot to put that in. Well,
of course they forgot.
People forget stuff.
You know why? Because I got up in that morning, I had a bad cup of coffee, so I forgot to put in that the CIA discounts it. It's
whole
totally
thing.
fake. And the National Defense Organization said this is all bunk. And everyone that's really in charge said it was bunk.
But I think Tucker had a good point. He said the reason they couldn't let Trump stay in power, like the 216, debates,
Yeah.
he said, we don't have to have these endless wars. So, I mean, everybody in the government said, without endless
Wars, how do we
make our money?
How do we make money? Because all those lobbyists are giving us so much money.
I mean, the beauty of a war is that it makes a lot of money.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you right now, Mark, this is still coming out, the Durham analysis.
Well, Durham's
will.
he's going to testify in Congress.
That's why we're going to cover this again.
And I think he'll probably testify just like Mueller did.
All right, so what is our second subject? We're talking about Kari Lake.
Okay, this is Kari Lake ran for Arizona governor, and she there was many. This was in
This was in 2020.
2022. No, this is 2022, isn't it? I think.
No, it's 2020.
2020. Okay, I forget. But there's so many election fraud things. There was thousands of cases that were filed, right?
Yeah.
About election fraud, but none of them had standing to be heard. So there's never been a single evidentiary hearing ever about election fraud.
Okay, well,
and this is the first one that actually got an evidentiary hearing.
Let me
and it's kind of
let me
interesting.
give you a little background about this. Kari Lake lost by 17,000 votes out of, effectively, Maricopa County. In Maricopa County, the courts and the counters that counted ballots already have 87,000 votes that the signatures don't match any of the people that allegedly voted. So now when you're talking about she lost by 17,000, but there's 87,000 votes that should have been disqualified. Magically, the majority for the current governor, out of nowhere, of course. Once again, these ballot harvesting, they're driving around, they're picking them up.
But the governor was also the Secretary of State.
Oh, and she's
she
in
was
charge of the voting.
She was in charge of the voting.
Oh, well, wait a minute. Let me understand this, just so we know. The Secretary of State is the one that won the governorship. She's in charge of the voting, and she was responsible, her office, with discounting the votes that don't count. So when those votes were finally looked at, they realized that 87,000 were supposed to be disqualified. Her office said, oh, they're just fine.
Well, no, what happened was, okay, this is what Attorney Kirk Olson, who's Kari Lake's attorney, told the court. And he said 11 of the signature verification workers approved 170,000 signatures at a rate of less than 0 to 2.9 seconds with a 99.97 approval rating. So let me just kind of simplify that. You have roughly 200,000 votes where people mailed in. Or maybe they dropped them in the
Dropbox. This is a collection.
Well,
Dropbox
whatever it is,
again.
but
this is the big fraud.
Yeah.
from that
So
election.
anyway, there's roughly 200,000 votes that they got there and they go, we got to find some more votes. And so instead of going to the level 1 and the level 2, they said, no, these got to go right up to the county clerk.
Oh, yeah,
right to the county.
verified.
These can't be done in the regular polling places and everything. These got a special treatment.
Oh, special treatment.
So they brought that 170,000 out, and the guys were clicking them as quick as they could get them, right? So that's 0 to 2.9 seconds.
You know that the governor, the Secretary of State, said those are good.
Well, but listen to this. Olson reveals there were approximately 274,000 ballot signatures compared in less than 3 seconds. So, and then they concluded that, that at least 70,000 mail-in ballots, or maybe their Dropbox.
87,000.
Well, round to 7.
Same round.
Okay, we're not properly verified in accordance with Arizona law. And then the election should be set aside. The bogus election was called by roughly 17,000 votes. Now, the judge said, but the signature review, even though it happened in 0 to 2.9 seconds, and 11 people did it and basically verified everything that came into their computer.
In a select group of people assigned by the Secretary of State who was in the election for the governor. Let's not forget that.
Okay, the judge said the signature review did take place in some fashion.
In some fashion.
In some fashion.
In some fashion.
So that's the ruling, and that's being appealed. And Lake said she's going to go to SCOTUS.
Well, she finally got a decision saying out of 8 counts, they're going to keep 1, and it looks like something's going to happen.
Well, there's actually some new evidence. 260 of the 466 tabulators were tampered with. New memory cards were installed after certification, causing a 59% failure in the Republican districts and long
in the
line.
Republican district.
And they have videos of them tampering with everything. So I think what this comes down to is like, it's not who votes that counts. It's who counts the votes.
Yeah, who counts the votes? And, you know, there's one other part of this. It's not who counts the votes as much as who's collecting the voter ballots.
Well, no, it's
because those are coming from who knows where.
But if you look at this, there were 65 million mail-in or drop box ballots in the 2020 election. And this is the first time ever in history that anyone's looked at this signature verification. And it turns out that, you know, a lot of them are done in 0 to 3 seconds. So that means the whole 65 million drop box mail-in ballots in the 220 are probably just as valid as these are.
Well, here's the interesting thing. Why does it take weeks and months to count ballots?
To get it right.
Oh, to get it right. But no, to find more ballots.
No, there's no end to doing right.
There is, man, it's funny where countries like Iran and France can count
one day.
And one day they can invite the whole country.
Everyone shows up.
And
everyone
by the way,
gives an ID.
They
count it one day.
Everyone goes in
and it's
France.
hand-counted.
Here's the ID. The vote counts. It's done the same day. The election's over. Even Iran, I mean, and then they're painting fingers in Iran to make sure you voted.
That'd be a good idea.
And if you don't have a painted finger, you didn't vote. So what's crazy about all this, we have what effectively is supposed to be the most sophisticated voting
you've got
system.
Dominion.
Oh, Dominion.
Yeah,
oh, wait, it's Dominion. Oh, that's that honest group out of Canada that's related to Michelle Obama.
And Soros.
And Soros, George Soros, Dominion out of Canada. So
anyway,
you know what scares me about this?
It's fun. Okay, what I'd say, they lied. We know they lied. They know we know they lied. And they know we know they lied,
Yeah.
But they keep lying.
And they keep going. You know why? Because this goes back to Germany. We talked about Germany earlier. If you keep telling the same lie, people are going to believe it.
Yeah.
And this was Goebbels. This is out of Nazi Germany that they're copying the exact. So when Biden said, I didn't fall, and Jean-Pierre says, oh, we don't know anything about that subject. Or, did you get a bribery, Mr. President? Where's the money?
Yeah.
Okay, this is all the big
But
lie.
I'm just saying, this thing is the first time, and I think it's really fantastic. This is the first time there's ever been an evidentiary hearing.
And it's fantastic.
And this is the first one. And they found that the whole thing's a sham.
And they found it's a sham.
Absolutely,
well, you know
a whole thing.
You know why Kari Lake knows it's a sham? Because she would have won in massive count.
But understand, but they couldn't let Kari Lake win.
They couldn't let her win.
And the reason is she's a border state, and as governor, she was going to
lock the border.
She was going to put state troops on the border. And all those border states are basically have something to do with the cartels. There's $3 trillion worth of drugs and prostitution coming over.
And by the way,
and that's in the black.
And we can't count on this, but the current governor of Arizona is what border? What border problem?
Yeah.
No,
but the point is,
okay.
there's $3 trillion in cartel money.
Oh,
right?
it's just so much.
And that's a lot of money. That's as much as the U.S.
Economy.
No, that's how much they collect in taxes every year. And so that's a lot of money, and that's in the black, so you don't have to pay taxes on that.
No.
And that buys a lot of stuff.
And by the way, when you say stuff, we're talking about elections.
Well, it buys a lot of stuff.
Oh, a lot of stuff.
I would say it buys a lot of apparatchiks, you know. And so, and if you don't...
But how do you stop that?
Well, I would say that Kari Lake is the first one who's gotten close enough. And I think that and there was also, you know, the lady who was the insurance investigator said, look at all these trusts and all these dummy corporations. And this guy who's the head of the Senate here, he's in on it. Well, the person who invited her got kicked out of the Senate. So basically,
and so let me tell you, you know what's interesting? I have a question. Are we getting close to a totalitarian government, and this is just the beginning of the free ride?
I mean, that's boat sailed so long ago.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
got it.
that's
Okay,
that
well,
boat sailed
listen.
long ago. Okay.
Well, I'm thinking, what is our next subject as we leave a border state in the hands of a cartel henchman called the government and
Well,
you know, the governor?
Well,
Okay, what do we got next?
I wouldn't say that. I just say they buy a lot of stuff.
They buy a lot of stuff.
Okay, so
You mean votes?
I don't want to
All
say
right.
we're not allowed to say what the stuff is.
Oh, that's true.
Okay, you can't say
That's
that.
right. We've been silenced.
We can't be say that.
All right, what do we got
We
next?
don't want to say any misinformation. Okay.
Misinformation?
Misinformation. Okay, so update from our
Is that
200.
black truck out?
2018 show. Okay, so we did a show 5 years ago. This is the blast from the past because we did the
This is Aretha Franklin.
We did the Durham 7 years ago, and I think we did a veteran report. You guys can look at it. I think we put there.
It's
But
on YouTube.
Yeah, but we also did a update. We're doing 2018 show, and we had Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Souls. Hits were Respect, Chain of Fools, Natural Woman.
Oh my gosh, she did so
she
many
earned $80 million
fantastic albums.
And so basically, her man, who's not her husband for 30 years, and her sons were heading for a fight even there while she was alive. And so we said, you know, when she passes, there's going to be a huge, you know, status dispute here. And I think we were right.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring up one thing that's only been released recently. They found $1 million in checks from her residuals that she never even cashed. So I want everyone to think about this for a minute. This isn't about a couple of checks in a drawer. They found a drawer that was filled with her residual checks from all her albums. And $1 million uncashed checks. She's not hurting for money. They don't even know how much money she actually has because she bought so much real estate, all her residuals from her albums, all the jewelry and the cars, whatever she's had, she has a lot. That is a battle, even more so maybe than Prince. Remember we talked, we had the Prince show, and we had how much he was unaccounted for. Now, what's different with this is Prince had no will. Aretha had 4 wills, and the 4th one is the controversial one. Mark, what do we know about that?
Well, as far as we know, you know, there was about 80 million in the estate, maybe quite a bit more.
At least.
So Aretha died last August, fairly recently. She has 4 sons, and she had her boyfriend, lover for 30 years that she didn't marry. And what's kind of interesting in this is 20 minutes of newly discovered voicemails with edits. So there's an 8-page will. It's an unsigned 2018 draft.
That was at her lawyer's office.
Yeah, that's
where they found it.
It's an even split. You know, it's got some special needs stuff. Now the question is, it does, you know, I think it revokes previous wills, and now it's in Oakland. So we wonder if that's going to stand up under state law. Is this unsigned draft unwitnessed, right? I think it's unwitnessed.
Okay, this is a will that's unsigned, unwitnessed. It's a draft, and you would
It's an even split between the sons.
With an even split with the 4 sons. By the way, there's 4 sons.
Right.
And whatever boyfriend. But the fact of the matter is, they even gave each son about $250,000 just to shut up and let them figure it out.
Well, what they probably did that for, and rightly so, was because there might be a no contest clause in a will. There generally should be one. And then if you give someone $250,000, they're like, well, should I contest and lose the $250,000? So even though in this situation it's changed, that's probably, you know, one tactic.
Let me ask you, Mark, you've done a lot of wills. I've done a lot of wills. If somebody came to you and said, I have an unsigned will that's unwitnessed of an intent, and it changes the prior 3 wills that were signed and witnessed, what would you tell that client?
It looks like, you know, we had some holographic wills before. The 2010, 2014 were holographic, which are pretty good. Because you can look at the handwriting.
Right, exactly. And compare everything.
And people are like, well, it's a handwriting. That's not so good. Actually, handwriting is pretty good.
No. People can write a will on a piece of paper.
Yeah, a handwritten will is a good thing because you can look at the, and also
consistency.
Well, also you can tell like whether this, and it's amazing. You know, I've looked at a lot of wills, 80, 90-year-old people. Their penmanship's really good.
Well, they were taught penmanship.
Yeah, they taught. I don't think anyone.
Nowadays, actually, I'm lucky. My daughter was taught penmanship.
Yeah, but most people
both of them.
Most people can't.
But most people can't write anymore in cursive.
But anyway, the point being, or even handwrite. But so that's a really important thing. And then you've got voice messages, which kind of are that's some good
rough,
evidence,
man.
That's some good evidence. And you've got texts. I don't know how good the texts are, because maybe those got intercepted or something.
How do you know that modern?
How do you know that a text is a really?
Evidentiary
How do you know a
position.
text is really a text from her?
You don't know that.
Yeah, and so someone could pick up her phone and text.
I can pick up your phone and write a text from you to whoever and saying, oh, by the way, you're a total, I love you, I love you, I love you. And the woman, the stripper, is going, who is this guy?
Well,
and you know what? You use it against you.
And another thing is, even with AI, I'm not even sure about voice stuff. Voice could be pretty easy to copy.
Well, they're doing the Beatles. They're doing one more Beatles song with voice AI from John Lennon from an unpublished song he did, and Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr are putting in. They're probably going to have George Harrison in here, and they're going to create what will be the last Beatles song. So now a question: will a voiceover of Aretha Franklin dictating the will, would that work?
Well, I think that it's got some weight, because what you're trying to discover is the intent of the
deceased.
Yeah, the testator, the person who's the testator. And so, what was their intent? But on the other hand, you've got statute of frauds, right? And this is a will or an estate or real property. Parole evidence will. Parole evidence will. It's supposed to be in writing.
It's got to be in writing.
It's supposed to have a signed writing.
And it's got to have a signed writing.
And so, you've got some law that goes back probably to Greek times, right? That's like land grants.
Yeah.
And then you've got like voice messages and a text messages, and I posted something on Facebook or something, but you
don't know who posted it.
And it's really, and also there's a.
Can I go back? You said going back to Greece. What about Hammurabi Code? The original laws of the land were chiseled out and posted everywhere into the entrance to the country. Now.
And also,
and that was accepted as evidence.
When you talk about tablets were clay tablets, which actually had engravings in clay tablets that you engraved, right?
Right.
That's where they got the tablets. So,
Yeah.
And so these things were written in stone or wrting in clay, and then
they were honored.
And they finally got papyrus, right?
Yeah.
And then everything went to heck after that.
Yeah, but see, one thing, it was like even when they wrote Shakespeare, who was the author of Shakespeare?
Really nobody.
We don't know, right? But here's the question. They've tried to go back and analyze the original writings to see if this was the Duke or the Prince of whoever, right? This is Aretha Franklin at an attorney's office, obviously working on a will. Why didn't she sign it if it was valid?
Well, a lot of times, the client can't make up their mind, right? And so they don't want to sign until they've made up their mind.
But see, here's the problem. She was already sick from pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, well,
and so you would think the priority would be, bring me the will, I want the final draft, number 4. And they didn't do that. So then the question is, who could have witnessed it? Why wasn't it signed and witnessed? And you know what? It's just like when Prince didn't think he was going to die, right. and he never even talked to a lawyer about this because he thought he was going to do it all. But I got to tell you, Mark, we're going to watch this develop. In fact, we got several of these we're going to watch as they develop. Tonight, it's been really interesting because these topics are not completed. So we're going to revisit those. And I want to say, thanks, Mark. It's been a wonderful night on Law Talk. And I want to tell you something. It's good to be back. Yep. And I'll tell you what.
After the shutdown.
Boom.
Okay, also, $7.8 million tax bill was paid, so that's good news for the
So that means that was chump change.
They were looking for that. And there's supposed to be a trial in July at this time, okay, on Aretha Franklin's law. Okay.
Well, we're going to find out how that all plays out, and we'll bring it back to you at Law Talk again. Thank you.
Okay, night.